Rob here at etrailer.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Timbren suspension enhancement systems for our Ford F-53 chassis motorhome. Now, motorhomes can be great. We can take a lot of trips, spend time with our family, see a lot of places that we've never seen before. But one thing that nobody really talks about when it comes to motorhomes is how bad they handle and how much sway they really have. For a lot of times we're driving down the road, a gust of wind may come, or a truck driving down the highway, it's going to start pushing us around. Because let's face it, there's a lot of area for wind to catch. And that can be very scary going down the road in such a big vehicle and not feeling like you have control. And our Timberens are going to alleviate a lot of that feeling. We're going to feel a lot more stable and under a lot more control of our motorhome because it's going to brace everything and we're not going to have such a mushy feeling. So here's what our Timberens look like once we have them installed. Now these are going to replace our factory jounce stops, and they're going to mount in between our frame and our axle. Now one thing I do want to mention is that we have our motorhome lifted up by the leveling jacks, not only so we could fit under here, get a little bit more room, but also so we could get these installed. Our Timberens are going to be in contact with the axle at all times, opposed to the factory bump stop, which is really just there and only going to make contact with the axle when we bottom out. And our Timberens are going to provide us a lot of cushion and absorb a lot of that road shock when we're going down the road. Now when it comes to suspension enhancements for your motorhome, there are a lot of different options. And what I like about these compared to, say, airbags, once these are installed, we can completely forget about them. There's no maintenance involved. We're not going to have to worry about air pressure, running lines, or maintaining the air pressure inside the bag. Now we have had a lot of customers write in and saying how much they enjoy them, and they really can't believe how much of a difference that these make when driving down the road. But our Timberens are going to be a really straightforward installation. They're going to come with all the hardware, brackets, and springs necessary to get them installed. And the best part is, we're not going to have to lift our motorhome off the ground. We can do all this with all 4 tires still on the ground in our driveway. To start our installation, I want to mention that we have our motorhome parked and it's on level ground. We got the emergency brake applied, but we do have our leveling jacks down just a little bit. We don't need to lift the tires off the ground, but we want a little bit of stretch on that front suspension so we can get our parts in place. So we're going to come underneath our motorhome, and we're going to start on our driver's side here, and we want to come right above the front axle. Here we're going to find our jounce stop or our bump stop. We're going to pull that out. So we're going to grab a short extension and a 13mm socket, and if you come up from the bottom, I'm going to break it loose, but keep in mind that if we look up on top of the frame here, it's actually going to have a nut that's holding it in place as well. So you want to break it loose just so it's easier to turn, but then we can grab a 15mm wrench, and we'll use that to hold the nut on top while we pull the bolt out. And once everything's fully loose, we'll remove the nut and the jounce stop. So we're going to grab our spring as well as the upper bracket from our kit. And if you look on the bottom of that upper bracket, we're going to have a hole. If you look inside, there is going to be a nut welded on there. We're going to line up that hole with the top of our spring here. Just get as close as we can. Then we're going to turn it over. And if we look inside of our spring, you'll notice there's going to be a washer in there. We want to get that as flat as we can so that it'll sit on the bottom of the spring. And we're going to take the smaller bolt that comes in our kit. And you're going to want to grab a 16mm socket and an extension. And just so that washer doesn't fall over or I don't drop my bolt, I'm going to kind of turn my spring sideways until I can get it to come through the top of the spring. I'll take our bracket, make sure everything lines up, and you want to get it started by hand to make sure it doesn't cross thread. We can tighten that bolt up to where it's not going to move anymore. So now we're going to grab our spring, and that second hole that's in the upper bracket here, that's going to line up with the hole that we removed our jounce stop from. You just want to make sure that this tapered section is on the outside of the frame. And it'll sit just like this once we get everything lined up. But before we get everything fully secure, we're going to grab the larger bolt out of our kit and a flat washer. And we're going to go up from the bottom, going through our spring. Then we're going to lift it up. The bolt's going to go through the frame, and then we'll take a nylon lock nut and secure it to the top there. Now I'm going to come back with a 19mm wrench and socket, or you can use a 3/4 inch wrench and socket, and I'm going to tighten up the nut, making sure that it draws my bracket all the way up and sits nice and square. Now on the passenger side, there is going to be a little bit different process to get our old spring out and attach the new one. We're not going to have any access to get a wrench to the inside of the frame to hold the nut, but there's a weld nut in the frame, so we just need to remove the bolt here. Now once we get everything out, since there is a weld nut, we're not going to be able to use the new hardware, so I reused the old bolt but still use the washer to attach the bracket to the frame here. Everything else is going to be exactly the same. That'll finish up your look at the Timbren suspension enhancements on our Ford F-53 chassis motorhome.